Hello, my name is Mark David. I'm the CEO and founder of Music Venue Trust. And this morning's, I'm sorry, I should tell everybody to start with. I'm in Austin, Texas, where it is currently 7 a.m. and dark.
Oh,
And I
blimey.
arrived here at midnight last night. So,
Bit jet
so
lagged.
yeah, a little bit jet lagged, but yeah, this is a Q&A session. Just for everybody's benefit, we are recording this. And we will be editing it into a video to distribute to other own avenues, investors and donators. Tony's just helpfully put the investment link and the donation link into the chat window there. In case you're not used to Zoom, there's not many people who aren't these days, but at the bottom of your screen, there is a chat button, and that will pull up a chat window on your right-hand side. And in there, we'll be putting various links, and you can ask any questions that you want to ask about the Own Our Venues project in that link. And basically what we're going to do is take all those questions, put them out into public, probably provide a Q&A sheet. This is the first one of, I think we're going to plan to do one of these a week, aren't we, Matt? Is that right? Do you want to come off mute?
Well, I think so. I'm useless at multitasking, letting people in at the same time. I think the idea is there's definitely going to be at least one more. I don't know if it was going to be one a week, but we'll see if the demand is there. See how it goes today. You may never want to do another.
Okay. Yes. Well, I mean, basically, yeah, so let me just give you a quick overview of what Own Our Venues is. Hopefully most of you already know that, but it's for the benefit of the video as much as it is for you. The Own Our Venues project is basically it's a project we've been working on, believe it or not, for about 8 years, which sounds a phenomenally stupid amount of time to work on anything. But as you'll appreciate, quite a lot has happened in that 8 years. When we originally founded Music Venue Trust in 2014, it was given the name Music Venue Trust because at that time, we actually imagined that the main role of the charity would be to effectively be a national trust for music venues. And that's really the idea that we've stuck throughout that time. The history of this particular project is that we originally came to market with the proposition of resolving the freehold ownership of these buildings, and I'll talk about that a bit more. We went to market with that in 2015. And the immediate reaction from potential investors, from all of our partners, including some that are now in with this project, was that it was obvious, as far as they could see, that the grassroots music venue sector was experiencing quite a lot of external pressures. And therefore, in their view, it was a risky investment. So the purchase of these properties was seen, I believe in being very blunt in these conversations, it was seen that we were at risk of acquiring a large number of tenants that were frankly at risk as businesses. And so the question that was posed to us was, is it possible for Music Venue Trust to try and resolve some of those external challenges, some of the things that were closing music venues down in 2015, and perhaps create a version of a working music venue, grassroots music venue, that was sustainable, economically viable, and would therefore create better tenants. And the question for us was, could we go away and do some work on that, and then perhaps come back, which is actually essentially what we've done. By January 2020, which I'm sure most of you have written out of your mind, but it's quite an important date. By January 2020, we had, as an organization working with the sector, we had reversed the ongoing closure of grassroots music venues across the country. And in January 2020, we were able to announce for the first year in probably 20 years, there were more venues operating in January 2020 of this type that had been operating in January 2019. And that would be the first year in, like I say, probably since 2000, that there had been more venues open and trading than there had been in the previous 12 months. So we were ready in January 2020 to go back to market and discuss the fact that we had resolved a lot of the external issues. The particular ones were planning, gentrification, noise complaints. We have a whole set of services that Music Venue Trust provides to network of venues across the country that we're now able to say that when a venue gets a noise complaint, it is more likely than not that we will be able to prevent that noise complaint from closing the venue down. When there is planning threatening the venue, it is more likely than not that we will be able to find a resolution that keeps that venue open. And people around us know that. And that created the circumstances where we could revisit this issue of the freehold ownership of these buildings, which I'll come to in a sec. Of course, in February 2020, external circumstances hit us again. We then spent pretty much, frankly, the next 2 years through until probably February 2022, really dealing with the immediate impact of COVID and then the rollout of the impact that it had on the sector. And just to tell you what that impact was, the sector found itself in £110 million of debt, which it had never had before. And that again created a new risk. So we began looking at how would we deal with that, what could be done to make this sector economically viable again, and that work's still ongoing. However, in February 2022, we were able to say that the worst immediate impacts of COVID were over, and that we were now ready to go back to what we call the Own Our Venues program. What's the issue we're trying to deal with? I mean, you can read most of this online, and I'm sure a lot of you are aware of it, but for the sake of clarity, 93% of these venues are tenants. Their tenancy is incredibly short term. They are mainly on now rolling leases. What the effect of that is, the average length of time they have on the leases, I think 17 months. Is that right, Matt?
I think we had it down as 18, but it could be 17.
Yeah, I think it might be 17 by now. That doesn't just create the problem that the lease can come to an end and the landlord may choose to end the lease or may choose to look for a different tenant. It also creates a set of investment problems. So wherever we look in this sector, however we look at how we want venues to be sustainable, frankly, we're confronted by the fact that they are tenants. So I would extend that to, well, okay, the terms of their tenancy mean it's very difficult for us to talk about carbon neutral venues. The making a venue carbon neutral actually involves quite a lot of infrastructure investment. The question for any tenant is, why would you invest in a building that you only have 17 months left to rent? The same goes for the program. We want to see more equality, more diversity, more inclusion across all these venues, wider programs of activity. But that's something you invest in the prospect of it making you money, or at least breaking even in 2, 3, 4, or 5 years' time. These venues don't have that kind of length of tenancy. We see across the work that we do through our emergency response service that supports venues, the issue of tenancy actually underwrites or sits underneath roughly 55% of all the cases we deal with. And some of them we may not immediately feel are due to tenancy, but actually are. So for example, on the issue of gentrification, actually, if you do the work that we do, you will learn very quickly that the landlord of a building that contains a music venue is frequently the beneficiary of gentrification. Their land value increases, and they are able to release that land value by selling that building at a quite significant profit. And in fact, what we see is landlords of these buildings, frankly, encouraging gentrification as a method to make money. The important thing for us to say before we sort of get into the technicalities of what we're doing, we are not actually in this project against landlords. You may have a very strong opinion about the behaviour of landlords around grassroots music venues, or about the landlord culture in the UK in general. We're not here to try and change that. We're here to try and change that for grassroots music venues. We're here to say that this model of ownership, where we have private landlords, mainly, frankly, private companies, corporations, particularly pension houses, or individuals who've accidentally ended up with a portfolio that includes a music venue, our view is that these are not the best people to own these buildings. The best people to own these buildings is, in our view, and we've done a lot of work, is a not-for-profit, benevolent ownership model that mirrors what happens for youth centres, arts centres, museums, galleries, all kinds of other spaces for cultural things. We are fairly unique in the cultural sector in having this type of ownership model, where actually one of the purposes of the building has actually accidentally become the profit that can be made by a private landlord. And so actually what we're looking to do is to change that. And our model is a community benefit society called Music Venue Properties. And the aim of music venue properties is to acquire the freehold of these buildings and to then create benevolent leases built on the single purpose that the landlord, music venue properties, wants there to be a music venue, and the venue operator wants the stability and sustainability of having a much longer term lease that is built around a cultural purpose lease. So the principal clause in our lease, as opposed to a private landlord, is not what's the maximum amount of money you can pay us and how can you invest the most into our building. It's what's your program going to be? How can we encourage you to put on more music? How can we encourage you to really support your local music community and be an absolute hub of creativity in your region, and frankly contributing to a national network? So that's the model that we're looking for. How do we achieve that? The community benefit society issues, and Matt, you better jump in because it's early in the morning here, and you can jump in and correct me when I get some of these technicalities wrong. We are issuing effectively shares that you can become like a shareholder. They're non-withdrawable shares. Matt, do you want to do the technical stuff here?
Yeah, that's right. They're non-withdrawable shares, and regardless of how much you invest, you only end up with one vote. So it doesn't mean like in a normal company, you know, the shareholders who invest the most get the biggest say. In this case, you can put in £100,000 and you would have one vote, in the same way that somebody who'd put in £100 would have one vote. So it means that everybody's views are equitable.
Okay, and so then basically, you in the investment model, and Lee's just asked a question which I've noted, but in the investment model, you buy a share, and the minimum investment is now £100 across the board. We did originally do only £100 shares for under 25s, but it is now £100. You can invest between £100 and £100,000 pretty simply through our crowdfunder. If you want to invest more than £100,000, then you would use our FX platform. Matt, do you want to put that into the chat window as well? And it's a slightly more rigorous process where they have to check source of your money, etc. But for most of you on the call today, between £100 and £100,000, you become a shareholder. You become effectively one of the owners, frankly, of music venue properties. And music venue properties is initially seeking to buy 9 venues across the country. So we will be buying the freeholds, and we will create a new lease for each of the venue operators in those locations. And then you will become effectively one of the freeholders of that building. And we will then create a lease that guarantees that that building will be there for many years to come. In our particular model, what we do is we seek to always make sure that that building will permanently be a grassroots music venue. So what we're imagining is perhaps the current venue operator continues for maybe even 20 years. But actually after that, we might find a new venue operator. They might find a new company structure. In the case of these 9, we are looking for each of these 9 to become community interest companies, which means that they will be not only a benevolent ownership through music venue properties, but also a benevolent management company through the community interest company. And that provides a number of tax advantages to them. For example, they don't need to charge VAT on tickets. It also places them in a better position to negotiate to reduce their business rates. And this creates an even more economically stable model. So effectively, this whole project is driving at what is the most economically viable version of ownership of these buildings and operation of these buildings, so that we can focus as much of every pound that's spent on the door on a ticket as possible into the program. Each of these venues will pay rent to music venue properties. Matt, I think we're currently pitching about 2% below the average market rent. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. It's about our different projections are between 6% and 6.5%. It probably end up being closer to 6.5%. And when I say 6.5%, that's the ratio between the value of the property and the rent they're paying. But yeah, on average, I think it's looking like it'll be about a 2% decrease for the average venue within the portfolio.
Within this portfolio, yeah. I mean, very important to say there is, it is not our intention of music venue properties to distort the market in some way. We aren't actually seeking to create venues that pay no rent whatsoever, although in the long term, we'd love to own through music venue properties as many of these possible, and have negotiations about how much rent they actually need to pay if more of it can be focused on the program. But that's the return, the financial return. Now, currently on the market, and I'm allowed to say what I want, aren't I, Matt? Yeah, I'm allowed to say what I want. On the market, we are promoting that we are aiming for a minimum return of 3%. However, we do have some things that have happened in the last 9 months of running this project so far. We have we have effectively a grant, although we can't call it that. But we have a kind of investment that doesn't require a return from Arts Council England, which has made our financial model slightly more rigorous. We have attracted effectively certainly a deferred, if not non-repayable loan from one local authority. And we are concluding a conversation with Nesta, which I can never remember what that acronym means. I think it's the National Endowment for Science, Technology and the Arts.
They told me that that's what it used to be for, but now it's just a brand name. So
is it? Okay, so
yeah.
That goes to their board on the 21st of March. Between those three investment things, we have raised or will have raised 1.15 million in this round, and that changes our model slightly for the smaller private investor. Matt and our financial team have been modeling some potential better returns for investors, and I think, Matt, we're sticking with the minimum return on your investment being 3% a year, but actually we're now aiming for 4%, aren't we?
That's right, yeah. So, and I think, I don't know if I misheard you then, but I think it sounded like you said 1.15, but in total, that would take us to 1.85 million.
No, sorry, 1.15 from those three sources.
Oh, I see. Matt. Okay, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. And then would take us to 1.85 across the entire package of what we've raised so far. So what we believe is that at the moment, with everything that private individuals have put in, some companies have put in, there's been some donations from companies like Sony Music, Warner's, Amazon, PPL, some other music industry partners. All of that together means that we've currently raised what we believe will be 1.85 million on the 21st of March. That's without doing any more between now and the 21st of March. And this particular share offer will now close on the 30th of March. I think it closes at midnight on the 30th of March.
I think that's correct, yeah.
Okay. So we are looking for, we're looking to try and raise the remaining, just doing the number in my head, 650,000. Is that right, Matt?
That's right.
See, I can do maths, even if it is 7 a.m. where I am. So we're looking to raise the remaining 650,000. We have a number of committed companies and individuals that we believe will come through on those. I can't give you a number on that because they can't give me a number on that, but we expect all of those to be in by the 30th of March. If we get to 2.5 million, it automatically triggers the investment, and a model will go out to all the investors explaining exactly what we're going to do with that 2.5 million. If we don't get to the 2.5 million, I believe, Matt, we are now in the position to say that we will come to market with a proposition to buy a smaller number of venues in this round.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, obviously, when we first modeled it, it was modeled entirely on getting community shares. And as you said then, the level of donations and grants essentially means the model works at a slightly smaller, with a slightly smaller amount of venues, where it didn't work before. It needed to raise 2.5, but that's made a massive difference because it's the best part of 700,000, the grants and donations.
Yeah. So basically, we didn't get to where we wanted to, and I'm always very honest with that. I mean, what would happen to us really on this particular round is in May when we launched this. It really was the start of what we might just call the cost of living crisis. And certainly what we've seen is actually people really believe in this project, but I think there's some reluctance to put in the £100 because everybody's worried about how they're going to pay their gas bill in April. We would like to see many, many, many more £100 because we've been very successful at the top end, and we can make this project work by just effectively using that big donation money and that big investment money that we've managed to raise because people really believe in this project. What really works better for us in our kind of ethical drive on this issue would be to find another 500 people who can put in £100, because if we'd really like to see there be maybe 1,000 shareholders in this effort, not because of necessarily the value of their money, which is important. £100 to somebody is a really important amount of money, as much as £500,000 might be important or equally important to some of these big companies. But I really believe in this model. I believe that the best people to own music venues are the music community themselves, and because it's one share per investor, I would like to see the influence of some of these big companies that have invested balanced out with somebody who lives in that area that can find £100 to become a shareholder, somebody who really feels strongly about music community who can find £100 to become a shareholder. So for us, it's incredibly important that everybody that can find £100, please put that in. Please become an investor, not just because you get 3 to 4% of your money every year. We'll send you a report. It's the sending of the report to you that's as important as you getting your £3 or £4 or rolling it over or whatever else. It's the fact that you'll be part of this community that owns the venues, and the fact that we establish this model and we can go back out to market after this one and say to many more people, well, let's all, like the whole music community, let's all own these venues. I'll give you some idea of the scale of the community. 20 million people visited one of these venues last year in 2022. If we could just get a fraction of those, even 1% of them, to become a shareholder in it for £100, that would raise enough money to buy a huge number of venues and really create something that's disruptive of this market, that says to the music industry, says to the government, look, the music community really wants to do something about these venues. We want to make them more viable. We want to ensure they're in our communities. So I know that a lot of you, £100 at the moment feels a real stretch. I'm not an idiot. I know how tough things are out there. But if you have got £100 in a building society, let me tell you now, you're probably going to get a better rate of interest out of putting it in this. That's my honest view. It's my personal view. I'm not giving you financial advice. I know that I've got a little amount of money in a building society. It's paid me 1.85% after all these interest rate increases. And we're being told now that interest rates are not going to keep going up. They're expecting them to start coming down the end of this year. We're offering 3%. I honestly, genuinely think it's a great place to put your £100. I'd love it if you could put in more than £100, but I want to emphasize what's really important to us is the shareholding democracy of a music community that owns these venues, that can actually say, we don't want that venue shut by gentrification. We don't want to take our money out of it. We want to keep the venue in the center of community where it belongs. Build around it, build sensitively around it, keep our music venues in our towns and cities. And the way for us to do that is for us to own them and for us to be the landlords. Lee asked a very important question. Because we are aware that not everybody's got £100, we have now opened up, and we know that people really believe in this project. And thank you to everybody who sent us such encouraging words. I get lots of messages from people, and I get lots of response on social media about how important this is. We have now open donations. Tony, could you re-put the donations a link into the chat window? Basically, on those donations, you can literally donate. I think the minimum is like £5, isn't it, Matt? Might even be £1 for all I know. And in answer to your question, Lee, basically you can directly donate to make sure that we include a specific venue in our portfolio when we buy them, which you can literally do for a fiver. Or you can, if you have £100, you can go to the investment page. So Tony, do you want to put that investment link in? And if there is anybody on this call that's dealing with a major fund or watching this video who's dealing with a major fund, again, just to repeat, if you want to invest more than £100,000, we recommend using the FX platform, which is also in the chat window here. So those are our 3 opportunities. Those of you who are perhaps running a fund, please look at over £100,000. We think it's a good rate of return. No, it's not the most amazing one in the market, but within a portfolio of investments that you may be making, if you choose this one, let you know what you know as well as I do. this goes on the front of your portfolio. It's an investment in communities. It's an investment in culture. It's the sort of thing that investors really love as a package of what they're putting in. If you are a smaller investor, 100 to 100,000 pounds, if you're thinking about where you could put some building society money, or money that's just sitting in your account, or you've rolled it into whatever, please use the crowdfunder link there for the investment. If you're feeling particularly benevolent, we do not mind if you donate more than £100,000. We don't expect that. If you're not currently able to raise £100, honestly, even a fiver, just please get behind this project and let's make this happen. Probably £650,000 that we've got to raise to get to 2.5 million sounds a lot, but actually we would be at 74%, I think, on 21st of March if everything goes through as we expect. We'd probably be at 75%. Normally, if you get to 75% on one of these community share things, you see investment roll in the last 10 to 15 days. I don't even know what day it is. Is it the 15th of March? That's a good guess. 15th of March. So we now have 15 days left. Probably my honest appraisal is in the next 6 days, we will probably see things continue to trickle in. And Tony, I think you found there was about £30,000 of investments came in the last week or so, as we announced the closing thing. So that's great. We expect that to keep stepping up. But listen, if you are watching this, let's imagine you don't even have a fiver. Things you can do is take any of these links in the chat window, put them on your social media, and encourage everybody to become part of this. The most important thing for us, Matt, am I allowed to say we're fairly confident of getting, we're definitely going to be buying venues. Am I allowed to say that?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, we're definitely buying venues. This project is going to happen. We are going to own our venues. We're going to prove that it's possible to create a different type of ownership model that's much more supportive. How many we're going to buy is dictated by the number of people who now commit before the 30th of March. And we would love to be able to buy all 9. We would love to be able to tell you that we've actually achieved the project as we originally set out to do it. So please invest if you possibly can, and please donate if you can't. Please, if you can provide a fiver, it'd be great. Great questions coming in. How does it work with personal tax? Can you include in your tax return with self-employed, for example, Matt?
I think only if you make a donation, because it's an investment. So you're not actually, you wouldn't put an investment on as a tax write-off, but you can. And Music Venue Properties has recently been awarded charitable status. So yeah, you would be able to put it down in your tax return if you were giving a donation. Yeah,
if you make a donation, you can certainly do that. If you're making an investment, it's treated like any other investment, Mark. The answer, Lee, is if you invest, if we get to the 2.5 million, which we hope we do, we will still, I think we've decided we will write to all investors and we will explain at that point, we will make decisions on the 31st of March about which venues we're going to buy. And if you, at that point, we will explain to you which ones we're going to buy and a reason for doing that. And basically you will have the option to withdraw if you particularly wanted to make sure that a specific venue was bought and it's not in that portfolio. So essentially that will be part of the process of us negotiating with the investors about which venues we're going to buy. Is that correct, Matt?
Yeah, I think that's correct. Obviously, there is some, there are certain things that could come further down the line that could change the position again. For example, structural surveys coming back and telling us that actually, this wouldn't be a sensible buy because it's about to fall down, etc. But yeah, so we can't speak with certainty, but that is generally the plan. But I think to add to that, I think it's important to know that even if a venue that you have an affinity with isn't included in that original package, it's not like we've given up on those venues. Like, the plan is then to build from the model. And there's definitely been some organizations who have a real, like government ones, local authorities, who have a real interest in what we're doing, but don't feel like they can be involved in this kind of speculative stage. But I really feel like once we've got money, then those discussions will progress. And and where there's Arts Council England, there's Creative Wales, there's Creative Scotland, there are very obvious places we can go when we actually have something a little bit more established and things are starting to happen. So I think, yeah, I would encourage people, even if they're disappointed initially, to see it as more of a long-term thing, because we're not giving up on the other venues that we wouldn't select in round one of the pilot project, if you will.
Yeah. Jim's question is really important. The answer, Jim, is that at the moment we haven't managed to get EIS on this initial pilot project. One of the reasons we want to complete the pilot is because we are in extensive conversations with Department for Levelling Up Housing Communities, Treasury, DCMS, and I don't think it's called BAYS this week. I can't remember what that department is called, about social investment tax relief and about potential use of levelling up funds. So the answer is, unfortunately, in this round, no, there's no EIS opportunity. However, we do expect that in future rounds, we should be able to create a specific social investment tax relief opportunity, even if it's not within the existing EIS or SITR. Government really believes in community ownership. It's not a political position. All sides of the House believe in community ownership. At the moment, the challenge is that the restrictions on SITR and EIS are that it cannot be used for the acquisition of property, which we think is quite a major flaw in the community ownership programs, and government agrees with us, but they haven't yet corrected that, Jim. Yeah, absolutely. That's worth reading, that Crowdcube thing. Any issue having non-UK residents, businesses, and investors? No, actually, I'm in Austin negotiating with a variety of people who are attending South by Southwest about international investments, and I have a meeting today, excuse me, where I expect to see 1 or 2 international companies coming in. If you are an international investor, then it's best through Crowdfunder, I believe, Matt, as there's set up to accept the international investments better, isn't it?
Yeah, it's only effects can't take Canadian or American investment for tax rules relating to those countries, but can take, European or anywhere else is fine.
Whereas Crowdfunder are actually registered in the US, so you can invest as a US investor or a Canadian investor.
Yeah, I think that's possibly it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the 2 that I'm negotiating with today are US based, which of course the music industry is not that unusual, let's be honest. Jim says, yeah, definitely worth reading that Crowdcube thing. For those of you who find tax relief quite boring, which would include me, I have had to learn all about them, and they are actually, the way that they're structured is very, very interesting, and certainly not just from the point of view of buying these properties, but there's a lot of other stuff happening. Yeah, as somebody says, if you go to the Crowdfunder link, you can download the share offer, and that's also on the FX link, I think, as well, isn't it, Matt?
Yeah. No,
yeah. So both the share offers are there for anybody to see. Anything else that you think we should cover, Matt?
I think I don't think we covered James's question, which is when do we expect to complete the first purchase? I mean, the answer is as soon as we can, but I imagine realistically everything seems to take a lot longer these days, doesn't it? So it's probably, I don't know, July. We could maybe, is that a bit too optimistic? Maybe, I don't know.
I was going to say it was a bit too pessimistic, but
Okay.
I mean, basically we have landlords who want to sell, and if we have the money, we want to buy. And generally speaking, when you're in that arrangement, things get a bit easier. So, but it won't happen in April, that's for certain, because obviously we've got to do due diligence. Despite how sort of flippant I seem about the ethical and moral things, I want to reassure everybody there is a team involved in this that handles all the legal and accounting and financial side. It's a very rigorous process. Outside of the kind of ethical drive of why we're doing this and the purpose that we've got for it, it is done in a very rigorous fashion, as you would expect from any financial investment. I'm very fond of saying I'm the loud, shouty bloke that stands at the front of the things that we do. My ability to do that is built on the fact that in the background, we have a very strong team of financial experts, property experts. Our board for Music Venue Properties includes people with years of experience of this type of project and years of experience of property management.
I
the
was going to
reason that
say
we
as
took,
well, just to echo that point, the offer itself has the community shares standard mark attached to it, which I'll post the link about that, so you can get some extra reassurance from that point of view.
yeah. I'm hoping to see the Arts Council England today, but I think we've essentially we received their offer letter yesterday, didn't we, Matt?
We did.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So I think I'm able to say in public that is a £500,000 contribution towards this project. I can confirm as of yesterday, I think, again, Preston City Council have put in £150,000 towards the purchase of the ferret in Preston, which is one of our 9.
Which, going back to the question asked earlier, actually would probably mean that the ferret, well, almost certainly would mean that the ferret would be included, not just for the necessity of the fact that it's on the open market, but because part of the total we've got is that Preston money, which can only be spent on the ferret. So
yeah, there's a number of factors that will decide why we buy various or prioritize buying various properties immediately. But to go to Matt's point that he made earlier, should also say we intend to buy all 9 of these. That's our aim. If we do not have the money absolutely immediately to buy the 9, that does not mean that any one of those 9 will drop out of the portfolio of the venues that we want to buy. It simply means that we will seek to raise more money to buy the ones that we cannot buy initially with the money that we have on the 30th of March. There is a meeting of the MVP board on the 31st of March where Matt and people who understand this stuff much better than I do will present to the board some options of a viable economic model for music venue properties. And I should finally say that music venue properties, to be clear, is an entirely separate entity from Music Venue Trust. It has its own board. It is its own thing. Music Venue Trust will become, well, is already, frankly, the campaigning agency for grassroots music venues. The work that I do for Music Venue Trust will continue to be that, and the team around Music Venue Trust will become the supporting mechanism that supports the venue operators that operate these venues. But Music Venue Properties itself is an ethical investment vehicle, frankly, to resolve the issue of ownership, which is a key aim for Music Venue Trust. But it has its own board and its own team, and it will go off and start looking at how it can expand that. I think I should probably conclude by saying, look, we see this as effectively a disruption of the ownership model. Will Music Venue Properties own all the venues, all the freeholds throughout the country? No, I'd like to see other models actually built on this, run by other people, emerge. I'm extremely keen to see regional versions of this emerge, where perhaps a local authority works with all the grassroots music venues within its region or its city to create an ownership model that places all of those into trust and benevolent models. The reason we want to see this expanded, the reason we want to do it, is we want to prove in this pilot that people care about these venues, they care about them being there, and they believe that actually the ownership can be changed and be more beneficial for the venues. So what we're looking at is to create the model and then go and explain it to people. And certainly Music Venue Properties, I think the modeling shows us owning 200 properties within 10 years. Matt, is that?
Yeah, I think that was if we can get the buy-in that we would need from external parties. But yeah, it showed that it was possible, certainly.
It shows it's possible. Our aim on this one is to prove it's possible. And the reason we need your support is to prove it's possible. You know, this is probably the most important thing that Music Venue Trust has instigated in the time that we've done things. And I'm very proud of what we've done. I'm very proud we've changed the planning framework. We've changed aspects of the law. We've brought massive support back into the sector. There's still lots of work to be done, and Music Venue Trust will carry on doing that. But if we can create a functioning model of ownership that means that venues are actually protected in our towns and cities, given the value they're actually have earned, frankly, then in that case we can take this back out to the market. We can take this right the way across lots of other potential investment pots, and we can say to people, look, this is the way that you actually do it. So unless anybody else has any other questions they want to
I
drop in the chat window.
James just dropped me a question. I don't know if he meant to do it directly, but it's not I think it's the question I could answer to everybody, which is, are there any other community-owned music venues in the UK, or would the Ferret be the first ever? And the answer to that is there's actually quite a lot of community-owned venues, although a lot of them actually just own the lease. But I know the Bell in Bath actually did buy their own building, and that was quite a long time ago. Actually, about 10 years ago, they were right at the forefront of this movement. And yeah, so they're a music venue that own their own building through raising money through community shares, and there may be a couple of others as well.
I think it's. Do you know what? Let's actually conclude on this thing. I didn't know very much about this when we started. It was just an idea 8 years ago. That, we thought, well, this doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right that these venues are all paying out huge amounts of money to private landlords. That really belongs in the sector. If we can keep that money in the sector, it'll make a real difference to what's achievable and what can be done. What I didn't know was there was a burgeoning movement of community ownership, which I'm now really engaged with, and I have to say I'm a massive convert. I don't think this is just about music venues. I think this is about sports grounds. It's about creches, nurseries. It's about everything, frankly. There's too much of the real estate in our towns and cities is owned by private companies, private individuals, private landlords, that really it's important to our towns and cities. And it goes to the central question that Music Venue Trust has asked for years as part of the Music Cities movement. What's this city for? Who does it belong to? What do people who live here want there to be in their city? And the answer is, when you move into a vibrant cultural neighborhood, you moving there because you want it to be vibrant and you want easy access to culture. And what we see is all these cultural vibrant neighborhoods across the country, whether it's the Cultural Quarter in Manchester, or it's parts of Bristol, or certainly, massive parts of London. Culture gets priced out. Sports gets priced out. Community facilities that are the reason that people want to live in these towns and cities gets priced out. And the way to stop that happening is for us, the community, to own it. I'm a massive convert to community ownership of property, and the people who need to own these properties needs to be us. We're the people who want there to be music in our towns and cities. So I think that's my big campaigning 7:43 a.m. in Austin message for you. Let's own our venues, because that's the right people to own them. Not some investment fund housed in a Grand Cayman account that nobody really knows who it is. Us. People who go to these gigs should own the buildings that these gigs are taking place in. They should have an investment in the future of those buildings that really makes us feel, okay, this is our town, this is our city, and it belongs to us. And I think this model is something you're going to see increasingly coming into play right the way across society, as more people understand it. More people like me who didn't really understand it start thinking, well, why is my local post office closed? Why is that pub that I used to go to closed? Why is everything being turned into luxury flats? And the answer is because we don't own it, and we need to own it. So that's our message for the morning or the afternoon, whatever time it is, wherever you are. Thanks to everybody who joined in with some questions. I think I am going to do one of these a week, Matt, because I think actually in the run up. So there'll probably be another one next week. Please get involved. If you can't afford to invest, please donate. But the most important thing is, please amplify this campaign. Please go on your social media with the links in this chat window, put them out there, and ask other people to join this hashtag own our venues. Thanks very much for your time. I think that concludes everything I've got to say. Anybody got anything else? Good. Thanks very much, everybody. Lovely to see you all. Like I say, I'm going to do one more of these next week, and then one just before the offer closes, and let's try and make this happen. Let's own our venues.